Good evening, everyone. This is Alan Murdock. I run Murdock Media Productions in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I'm coming to you live on YouTube tonight, and I am recording a session that I will edit and upload to YouTube later on. Tonight, I want to talk about the new City of Cedar Rapids Downtown Development Plan. I'm calling it the Disneyland Downtown Plan here in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. A lot of people may disagree with me on that assessment, but talk it through and talk about some of the features of the plan, some of the risks and challenges to the community, and get some feedback on the city council members, what they said about the plan and the direction that they're going with it. So I'm going to stream the city council meeting as part of this, and I'm going to have to jump it back and forth between my mic and the system sound. So there'll be a little as I move back and forth between those two systems, but we'll get it going as much as we can. The things to know about the city council meeting: there are 2 public comment sessions. For anything that's on the agenda, there's a comment session at the beginning before they actually discuss the item. So people can come in if they've read their packet, if they've read the information that the city has had to present, then they can make a comment about that. They have to sign up on a sheet in advance, and then they're able to speak. Anybody that wants to speak on issues that are related to the city but that are not on the agenda speaks at the tail end after everything has been presented. And so when you're going to city council and you want to present, there's a couple of different challenges. Number one, when you speak on an item that's on the list that they will discuss, you present before they discuss. So you don't get to respond to what they say. And if you speak at the end, you're not supposed to roll in things from the meeting itself to then comment on during that period. You have your topic, you've written down your topic, you're supposed to speak on your topic, and you're supposed to leave everything else off the table. So it can be challenging to get good dialogue back and forth on these issues in anything that's close to real time. So I want to put that out there first. The other reason for mentioning that is that I'm going to talk about, we're going to play James Klein. He is the president of CRBT, that's Cedar Rapids Bank and Trust. They have their regional bank in our area, and they fund a lot of development. They're also in agriculture and small business and other types of lending, personal home loans and things like that. So CRBT president is the chair of the planning committee. He's the chair of the downtown SMID, and we'll talk about what that is. It's a development program by the city and supported by business owners in a specific region. We'll dig into that further as well. So he's going to talk a little bit about his perspective from being inside of the process of developing this proposal. And then he's going to make a recommendation that we adopt that. So I'm going to switch my audio over so that you can hear what he has to say, and then I'll play his clip. It is freezing me out. Let me see if I can go to system preferences. Input, output. It froze me out previously, but then it allowed me to make changes. So I'm trying to figure out why it won't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the recording, stop the play. I'm going to leave, and I'm going to see if I can come back.
Comes at the end of the meeting for residents to speak on issues that are germane to the city but may not be on the agenda today. Council members and city staff, as you'll see, always make themselves available before and after our meetings. At this time during public comment, we as a council are here to listen. Please remember that all matters that we discussed prior to the first public hearing today apply to the public comment periods as well. Remain at the lectern. If you have documents to share, give them to the officer. We will then get them. Public comments are limited to 5 minutes a person. All comments should be directed to matters you wish to address, and no abusive, personal, irrelevant comments will be allowed. There should also be no participation from the audience. If you want to speak, please approach the microphone when called on. Today we had 3 people. I believe one has already spoken. We have 3 people who've signed up to speak, though, and I will call you to the podium in the order in which you're listed. First is James Klein from CRBT, speaking on item number 26. James, I'll have you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Mayor and City Council. I'm here really with 4 different hats on today to talk about the downtown visioning process and plan that is on your agenda today. First of all, I come to you as part of the planning committee. So we kicked this off in the spring of this year with constituents from various areas through a thorough selection plan, selected Puma, who you will hear from later, for the downtown vision plan. And my experience with them has been fantastic, thorough, detailed, and has offered us a great visioning plan for the future of downtown Cedar Rapids. My second hat I'll put on is as the chair of the downtown Schmidt. Our downtown Schmidt is certainly committed to the downtown and has been part of this visioning process. And we want to coordinate with the city and accelerate some of the items in the plan as we go forward. The third hat I put on is CRB. I'm the president of Cedar Rapids Bank and Trust. And certainly a downtown vibrant community is important to us as a community bank for the future of our city. And then my last hat I put on is as a lifelong Cedar Rapidian, living here over 50 years. I remember coming downtown, and the importance of a downtown to a city is quite important. So with all those hats, I recommend that you adopt the downtown visioning plan from Puma.
Thank you. Next up is Tom Marshall. And I can't exactly tell what Tom is here to speak on. Oh, 1.7.
All right, so we can kind of see what's going on with this presentation, and so I have a couple questions. You know, when we're talking about a banker being chair of the development commission, especially the president of a bank, you know, we're looking at somebody who has significant investment opportunity in the outcomes that are going to happen there. So one question that I have is, the CRBT bank precluded from funding and investing in the development of this area, or are they carte blanche to lead the development, promote the development plan, fund the development plan, and then also receive, you know, the interest off loans? And if somebody defaults, can they go claim that property and then just resell it or manage it right back into the plan that they've been running the whole time? It seems like a lot of power and a lot of authority and a lot of benefit to claim from being involved in leading the development effort. So that's a question that I have for the city. I don't know the answer to that. I will ask the city at a city council meeting. So then I'm going to jump into this presentation. There were a couple other speakers, so I'm going to jump forward and we're going to go to Jennifer Pratt. Jennifer Pratt is a director for the city and worked closely on the Vision CR plan, which is big picture citywide development plan. And she introduces Brad from a company named Puma. They are a research and development company out of Denver, Colorado, that works with cities that are trying to develop their downtown. We've done significant research. We're going to look at some of that research today, and I'll talk a little bit about that. Again, I'm going to be jumping in and out of live to be able to switch my audio so that you can hear it without the sound being squawky. I need to change the input, and I'm not able to do that live with the setup that I have right now. So I'm going to go ahead and stop again. I'll jump out, but I'll be right back. And we're going to keep this live going. And we're going to be watching the introduction to this plan from Jennifer Pratt.
Have 4 million short.
Thank you, Mrs. Mayor. I'm not sure if I signed the right form, but I am concerned, just
Incorporating it into our Envision CR plan. Jennifer Pratt joins us now. Jennifer, I will recognize you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to just first introduce Brad Siegel and Amanda Kennard, who are from Puma Consulting, who will be up in the presentation. But I just wanted to take this time to know that the city has had a long history of working with the downtown SMID on visioning for our future, and it has been great to have that framework for the future. I will say one thing unique about this plan is it does include not only the vision, but the action plan component, which again, we have seen through Envision CR has been so incredibly important to make sure that we are moving these projects forward. So again, that balance between aspirational vision, getting people excited about the future, and then steps necessary to get us there. So with that, I will turn it over to Brad and Amanda.
Thank you, Jennifer. And Amanda.
All right, so we have this conversation that's going on between Jennifer, the mayor, and I'm just trying to get to the right framing. Okay, so we have this conversation. Jennifer is making an introduction, and she talks about how the city's been working for a long time with the downtown SMID. That is SSMID. It stands for Self-Supported Municipal Improvement District. These districts have to be designated by the mayor. And they draw a specific boundary around an area of the city. Anybody that's within that area, I think they probably do an internal vote as well to confirm that they want to move forward with this. And once that is up and running, everybody in the SMID pays additional tax, and that tax money is used for improvement as well as marketing of the SMID. And right now we have about 4 of them. We have the downtown district, which is under discussion during this session. We have the MedQ, which is focused on hospitals and medical services. We have another one called the district that is actually a combination of 2 sides of the river. One is the Czech Nubo area, and the other is called the Nubo Market District, because there's a market that small startup restaurants can work out of. So we have those districts, and we also have one that's called the College District. It is associated with, there's a couple of colleges downtown, and they're working on designating boundaries for that. And that's one that I want to learn a lot more about. I don't know a whole lot about that one. So this SMID is set up to focus on the downtown. The plan also includes both a strategic component as well as actionable components that can be activated by the SMID and the city together. And what they're going to vote on today is the approval of the plan. They're not approving the specific actions, but they're approving the overall game plan, and then they have a task force that's going to carry things forward and do further development. So let's go ahead and listen to Brad's introduction. Brad is from Puma. Like I said before, they are a Denver-based company that focuses on downtown revitalization, and he has some really interesting things to say. So I'm going to stop again, get my audio set for you, and then I'll be back in just a moment.
Recognize you. Thank you for making the trip. Good to have you back.
Thank you. Thanks for welcoming us once again. It's great to see all of council and mayor and everyone in the audience as well. We are happy to be back here. We're going to give you a fairly brief presentation overview of the Downtown Action Plan. We've been at it since early the first quarter of this year. So this is our fourth trip to Cedar Rapids on this project. You may recall I had some interaction in Cedar Rapids back in 2007. So it's been a real pleasure for me to come back after that amount of time. Why now? Why the Downtown Vision and Action Plan? Cedar Rapids has a great history of planning and also taking care of its downtown and investing strategically in downtown. And these strategic investments are really driven by these series of plans. So this started in 07. The last plan was in 17. The screen is from the 2017 plan. This is an update to that, looking ahead for the next 5+ years, and really responding to a variety of influences, including the community's progress in installing flood control projects, and also responding to some changes from the pandemic that are affecting not only Cedar Rapids, but downtowns across the country. This has been a collaborative effort between the city, the Downtown SMID, and the Economic Alliance. I want to acknowledge we've been working with a project working group representing different partners.
Okay, so what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about what's going on with this work group that they're talking about. And I have the report with me, so I'm going to switch screen shares. I'm going to stop the screen share that I have going on. I'm going to start a new one, and I'm going to bring up their actual report. So let's take a look at the PDF. Here we go. So this is the downtown report, and let me get to the screen I want to get to. So this is the committee that they put together. This is all pretty much developers, bankers, and it looks to be 100% white in terms of its demographics. We've got the mayor. Doug Newman is a director of the Metro Economic Alliance. Nikki Wilcox is now appointed to a new position. Nikki was in the communications area. Now she's going to direct the downtown district. And Jennifer Pratt, City of Cedar Rapids. Caleb is City of Cedar Rapids. And then these are people from the commission and developers. And this is somebody from the county supervisors district and from insurance. So this is kind of the makeup. I don't see diversity that I would hope to see. And I'm going to talk further about diversity in Cedar Rapids. It's an area that gets overlooked because our diverse population is small, but there are districts that are adjacent to these SMID districts that are high diversity, and they simply get bypassed in the conversation. And that's something that I want to change in the way that the city goes about its development process and the way that they put together their work groups in particular, because this type of work group is simply just not even going to consider, so if you have African Americans at about 8% in Cedar Rapids, they're just going to, these committees are just going to see that as a demographic, that its opinion doesn't matter, and that is not the case. And they don't do the work to gather the information from diverse communities in our area to really get the answers that they need, the insights that they need to serve diverse communities. So let's go ahead and jump back in. Amanda Kennard is Brad's coworker and worked on this report, put together a lot of the report components, and she's going to talk about stakeholders that they engaged and how they got the information from those individuals. So I'm going to pause again, and we'll jump into that sequence once I get my audio switched.
In this process, Also other leaders within the downtown community. I also want to acknowledge the mayor. Oftentimes we'll get the mayor's name and we don't always get the mayor, but in this project we got both. And Mayor O'Donnell was involved from the beginning, hands-on, and we are grateful for your participation and contributions to the plan. Today, again, we'll take you through sort of a rapid-fire summary of key elements of the plan. I believe council had a chance to take a look at it. It was distributed within the last 10 days or so. And with that, I'm going to hand it to my colleague, Amanda Kennard.
Thanks, Brad, and thank you for having us here this afternoon. So community engagement was a really key component of the planning process throughout. So we initially engaged downtown stakeholders. We had regular check-ins with our working group. We also held roundtable meetings and individual interviews with key stakeholders. We then distributed an online survey, which got over 1,400 responses. And I'll go through some highlights of findings from that online survey.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about these demographics, and I'm going to bring up my screen share again so we can look at the report directly. When I look at the report itself and see what's going on here, when I look at this community outreach section, some things strike me. So number one, we have 100,000 plus individuals living in Cedar Rapids. So we have 1,600 inputs collected. So a little bit over 10%. That seems like a good metric to be able to extrapolate data from. So when we look at these figures, though, the downtown engagement included about 150 participants in 5 working group meetings using roundtables. And so that's going to be an invite only kind of thing. They're reaching out to local businesses and people that are regularly downtown. They want to collect their information. And then they used an online survey, and the 1,414 people that responded to that survey, they really targeted that to outside of the downtown area. So they hit all the suburbs and all of the outside areas. Is a higher profit, a higher household income out there, looking at 160,000 plus per household, whereas when you are looking in Cedar Rapids proper in the downtown area, you're looking at least $10,000 less than that per household. So they're looking at those who have more money and saying, what do you want in a downtown? What's going to bring you downtown? And they're not surveying the people in the local area. They also did a pop-up at a blues night with about 60 participants. That's what you see here, the booth kind of a deal. And then they had open house meetings, again, 50 people, and the open house the Economic Alliance holds are poorly advertised. They don't do a lot of effort to get those broad, especially to the town resident community. It doesn't get passed on very well. And so there's a lack of communication about that in the town. So when we look at this, I'm going to jump to the next slide because they're going to talk about it in a second. When we get to demographics, we've got 55% in the greater Cedar Rapids. They're outside of downtown. So they're really asking external people what they want to see in downtown. And then they distributed by age and income. It skewed female 61%, which isn't terribly bad, but white 95%. When we take a look at the actual data for our city, I'll go ahead and share a different screen here. So let me share again. I'm going to go back to my browser window. And in my browser, I want to bring up the census. So when we're looking at this, we can see that we've got white alone is 8% of the population in Cedar Rapids, and Black African American is 8.7%, and then American Indian is 0.2, and Asian alone is 2.7. Native Hawaiian is 0.3, 2 or more is 6%, and Hispanic or Latino is 4.0%. So, we're kind of seeing, white alone, not Hispanic, is 78%. So we're not seeing that kind of diversity represented in the survey responses, and not skewing the data significantly. So they're looking for what they're getting is feedback from a single population and not understanding the rest of the population. So let me bring up actually a map. Let's go .google.com, and we can take a look at downtown Cedar Rapids real quick. When my screen loads. Google Maps does not want to load. Here we go. So here we are in Cedar Rapids. The area that we're looking at is right downtown around the river. So this area here is considered downtown. They're extending that to cover this area over here. And when you get out to this area, Oakville Jackson, so the downtown ends about here, then you've got an area they're calling the Med Quarter. And the Med Quarter is, there's a hospital here, there's a hospital there, and this area in between is all being developed with a medical focus. This area down here in yellow is one of the other SMIDs. So this is the Czech Village side that I mentioned, and this is the New City Market side. And historically, this riverfront area was high African American population, high diversity. It's a historic Black neighborhood in Cedar Rapids, and Wellington Heights is well recognized as a high diversity community, and that extended out into more is a former mansion and is a nonprofit, and so that's the outside. This street right here, which is 19th Street, is kind of the dividing line between African American community and the wealthier and high wealth white community. And so this is kind of a collision point between the focus on revitalizing financially this whole area down here and the pressure that it's creating on First Avenue, Wellington Heights, and Oak Hill Jackson in terms of property values and who gets to live here and what that looks like. Wellington Heights, actually, this whole district, this whole area right here, used to, I looked at data from about 10 years ago, used to be about 40% diverse. And what that means, the United States actually was a little higher than that. It was like 48 to 50-ish% diverse. And what that meant was that it was equal or greater diversity than the diversity of the United States as a whole. And so when you're looking at all these other areas that are predominantly white, you ask, is this area going to create things that are actually going to be meaningful to diverse people around the country and around the world? Well, Wellington Heights is the neighborhood that has that knowledge, has that community, and has that insight. And so it would make sense to center, development around new ideas and new cultural connections between people in these areas, rather than focusing on what the people in the external regions want from a downtown, so that they can come in, drive up prices, and push these individuals out and break up what is actually a really viable, valid, rich, diverse neighborhood. So those are things that I'm really thinking about. I know other people are thinking about them as well. And I know a lot of people have given feedback to the city regarding that. So there's a lot of, will the city listen? That's a big question. And how do we, as residents of this city, press our local government to accept that information and change its development practices? Are they locked in, and are they just going, or are they willing to flex and change the way that they take their approach? So I'm going to go ahead and share back to the video sequence, and I'm going to pause so that I can set up my audio so you can hear it.
In just a moment here. Additionally, we had a pop-up at the first Blues Night in downtown back in May of this year. And then we also had an open house meeting when we were on site back in August to present some key findings from the plan at that point. So here are some highlights from that online survey. Quick snapshot of who heard from. We heard from a lot of Greater Cedar Rapids residents outside of downtown. Also a really strong representation from employees. And then we also had a reasonable, well distribution of respondents by age and income, but more females and more white respondents. So we asked folks today, what are the top 3 things that bring them downtown? Food and beverage was high on that list at 70%, followed by events, festivals, and entertainment. So things like theaters, live music, things of that nature. Next, we asked folks looking to the future, what are 3 words that best capture their vision for downtown?
I want to talk a little bit about these slides that Amanda's been going through. I'm going to share the report again so that we can look at it ourselves. So when we look at this survey, we go through these slides. So we've got the community outreach and the percentages, who's reached and so forth. Then we've got this more from the online survey. What are the top 3 things that bring you to the downtown Cedar Rapids? So we can tell from the framing of the question that they're not actually interested in what people who are already downtown think and feel about the downtown. They're really thinking about who is external to the downtown and how do we get them to come downtown and engage with that. That's actually been a key question in their development plan since 2017. The question of how do we get people to come downtown and stay downtown? One of the challenges, for example, when they do the farmers market downtown, people will come, they'll walk the circuit, they'll buy things at the farmers market. But if all of the people that came down for the farmers market wanted to eat downtown, there would be so many people waiting in line, and they wouldn't be able to turn booths over, and people wouldn't be able to eat. So a lot of people come downtown. If people want to stay downtown, those areas fill up quickly. People just generally leave because they can drive to somewhere where there are more restaurants and there's more seating and so on and so forth. So the question here is, what do people want to come downtown for? They want to come down for restaurants, bars, events, festivals, entertainment. This is kind of how they see it. Social services is down at 2%. And city county business is at 8%. I suspect in personal, gym, salon, barber is 11%. If you started by interviewing people in Wellington Heights and Oak Hill Jackson and other areas that are even further out to the east, you would shift this a lot, because a lot of people are actually going to go downtown to, to go to their church or to go to social services. And they're going to see the downtown as extending into Oak Hill Jackson and as extending into Wellington Heights. They're going to say we live downtown rather than just this little district that the city has carved out. So how residents see the map and how defining the map is different. What people want from the downtown, what they get from the downtown is really different if you interview downtown residents than if you don't. And so we don't even have a comparison contrast of attitudes and opinions for people who live downtown and people who live remotely and come downtown. So then we get to the slide, and this is really very coded language here. So safe and clean, when they were redeveloping the riverfront area that I showed earlier, one of the big questions was, so there were some buildings that were Section 8 housing. There were some buildings that had artist lofts in them. And, it was a pretty dynamic scene in terms of art and diverse people. Some people have described it, even people that are at the Economic Alliance have described it to me as an S-hole, so they said it was such an S-hole, you wouldn't, what you're missing about this riverfront district is it was so bad off that it should have just been bulldozed, right? And so that's kind of the attitude that a lot of people have. But in talking with people that lived and interacted and engaged down there, it was a vital community. It was somewhere that especially African Americans didn't have to code switch all the time. They could be themselves. One person described knowing who lived in every house on the main street there and what was going on, and just being able to interact very freely and openly in that area. Other people saw it as dirty, unsafe, dangerous, unhealthy, and not the kind of place that they wanted in their community. So again, we have this kind of clash between what does safe and clean mean. Safe and clean means no homeless people and low diversity or acceptable diversity, people that fit into a middle class business kind of realm, even if they're from a culture that's different than the mainstream culture in Cedar Rapids. So let's go ahead and jump back to the video. I'm going to pause so I can change up the mic again, and I'll be back in just a sec.
In 2032. So top two priorities were clean and safe. So really the fundamentals. And then from there, folks really want to see a downtown that's entertaining, lively, vibrant, and fun. Next, we asked folks what their top priorities are for downtown improvements looking forward. This first graph and response illustrates what physical improvements were most important to folks looking forward. So embrace the Cedar River, the top response. A quarter of participants selected that. Redevelop and repurposed underutilized land in downtown was next, and then improve the parking experience was also in the top three. Next, we asked that same question, but about services and programs. So what is your top priority looking forward? Continue diversifying restaurant and bar offerings was the top response, which was tied with provide more services to the unhoused population. And then finally, in the top three was create more family and kid-friendly features and places. Next, we asked folks if they were to consider living downtown, what kind of housing they would most like to see. So interestingly, 60% of surveys indicated they would consider living downtown, which is really compelling from our perspective. And the top types of housing they want to see are ownership opportunities, so condos and townhomes, and then apartment buildings. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Brad.
Thanks, Amanda. We had a third member of our team, Andrea Guglione, who was also on site, and she prepared a market assessment. And what we're doing with the market information is we're balancing what we heard from the community through the survey work with some understanding of what's realistic over the next 5-6 years in terms of the downtown market. In short, we see
Okay, so we have this interesting exchange about this maker zone, and I want to bring up the report again so I can talk a little bit about that. So I'm going to switch my screen share. So we've gone through these outreach survey components about embracing the Cedar River and so on and so forth. They want more restaurant and bar options. They want things that are going to take care of and deal with the unhoused population, and they want it to be more kid friendly. So they wanted to find out what people what kinds of places they wanted to live in. So condos, townhouses, and apartment buildings, and so these are the high cost, and then these are mid to high cost. So depending on earnings, we're looking at higher cost per square foot than is currently extant in any of the downtown areas. And then we had this conversation going on about this market assessment. And so they want people to live, work, shop, dine, visit, and stay. It's kind of like the mantra of this whole development plan. And they talked about this little makerspace concept, and I want to show the makerspace map right here. And so this area, the city library is down here, and Green Square Park is in this area. And there are so over here, this is the library. This is the other side of the library. And there is some industrial. So Pepsi Cola has, come on, kitty. It's okay. It's okay. So Pepsi Cola has a warehouse down here. They do distribution from there. And there's other industrial type properties going up to 8th Avenue over here. So when we're looking at all of that area, there's a conversation about having a makerspace, and the Brad mentions brewing beer, and I think that's kind of funny because there's this comment on the social post when this video was shared to Facebook. People said, no, not more beer. It's funny because in Iowa, people are very focused on commodities. So we come out of agriculture. A lot of people have farming experience or other types of agricultural experience. And so when Iowans think of a brand, they think of things that they can make that then can get a label, get distribution, and get a following. And that's kind of like the process that Midwesterners think. I spent a lot of time in Portland, Oregon, and places where branding is predominant. And in those markets, the idea is first, let's figure out who we're going to serve, what that demographic wants or needs, and then how we're going to fulfill those wants and needs with services, products, ideas, and experiences. So if you start from that, you don't know what you're going to make. You could end up making a space to hang out, or you could end up making a computer, or you could end up making software, or you could end up making a shoe. The outcome is dependent not on the skills that I have to make a particular thing out of raw ingredients that are grown around me, but rather understanding an audience and what it is that I'm going to present to them. So it was kind of funny that the only maker concept was craft brewing in that area, when there are many, many other ways that a maker space, which could include a combination of software, machining, laser cutting, 3D printing, plus approach that starts with brand building, if we had those kinds of things, that would be a much more dynamic foundation for innovation than saying, hey, we could put a bunch of breweries down here. But it kind of like ties to the culture of Iowa and what people might think of if they're going to say, oh, what could we make? Well, where's beer? So I'm going to go back to and play through this slide, and we'll take a look at that. So I'm going to jump back in when they have audio switched over.
Housing continue to be under high demand in the downtown area. We do see some sorting out of office space and how offices are used as we all adapt to hybrid and less than 5-day work styles. But I think there's a lot of opportunity. Fortunately, Cedar Rapids doesn't have as large a concentration of office space in its downtown as other cities that we work in. And there are a lot of repurposing options for some of the properties related to flex space, co-working, and housing. Shopping and dining, more local independent business concepts we think makes sense in downtown, and continuing to add unique businesses that include restaurants, resident serving retail for the people who are moving into downtown, and other creative uses. And then lastly, room for more hotel rooms in downtown. We have some of that coming online across the river, but there's certainly room maybe for another boutique property in the core of downtown. So all of this research and what we call discovery led us to these key takeaways. And from here on out on this presentation, we're going to get into the meat of the plan in terms of the recommendations. So number one, just to comment on the resiliency of this community. And I mentioned earlier that I had worked here in 07, so that was before the floods. Coming out of the flood, and then not only the pandemic, but also coupling that with the derecho, which we learned about in this work. Pretty astounding how this community has bounced back. Downtown, many assets, but we feel that downtown needs more consistent activation to attract people down here and more reasons to come downtown. Embracing the river remains a priority. That was a priority of the 17 plan. We believe that downtown will be best served if it continues to evolve as a neighborhood with more people living in it. This plan does recommend three key catalytic initiatives that are focused on the public realm. And the idea here is if we improve our public spaces strategically in downtown, that's actually going to attract more investment. It's also going to attract more people to frequent downtown. It's going to give more people a reason to actually come back to the office and work down. So these catalytic are very much interconnected moving forward. And then sixth, we looked at how services are delivered in the downtown area, and we have some recommendations on optimizing those services that I'll touch on at the end of the presentation. So the vision for downtown moving forward. Downtown is the vibrant hub of the Eastern Iowa region where the past meets the future, entrepreneurship flourishes, diversity is celebrated, and innovation is embraced. The plan includes a physical framework, and Amanda in a moment is going to talk about these catalytic projects that we mentioned. But what we looked at with the physical framework is how all the different existing infrastructure works and how do we optimize the existing investment in infrastructure before we build a bunch of new stuff. So we looked at existing public entertainment destinations, the parking system. Cedar Rapids is blessed to have a robust series of parking ramps and parking supply. We identified opportunity sites for new investment. An area of downtown that would work well for light manufacturing and maker type uses, such as brewing beer and other types of uses where we create and make things. Integrating all of this with the flood recovery projects that are already underway, and again, adding these catalytic projects that Amanda will run. The plan is built around 3 major goals, and we'll be repeating these a couple times in the remainder of the presentation. But number 1, embracing the river. 2, ensuring that downtown is activated. And 3, making sure downtown's connected well to its adjacent districts and neighborhoods. So Amanda, take it away on the catalytic projects.
Thanks, Brad. So I also want to acknowledge
All right, so I'm jumping back out of that presentation, and I'm going to share the report again. So I want to talk through just pretty quickly some of these engagements with the city that they want to have. So the idea here is to engage these areas. This is to these pink dots are becoming areas that they want people to come in and do things, and engage with social activities. So river activation, getting people involved on the streets and on Mays Island. They're imagining kind of permanent space or venue here. And the idea of storefronts that are throughout this region. We're also looking at how to change up the downtown pathways so that you've got bike paths and driving paths. There are a number of different ways that these have been done. I've lived in 5 cities now where the same kind of development plan has played out. So I've seen the restructure of this, and the usability components are fantastic. So when you can make it more walkable, when you can make it so that you can choose a bike or take an electric train, a lot of times cities will put in an electric rail or buses or other kinds of things, including the free zone where you can get around throughout the downtown area without paying additional fees to get around in that area. So a lot of these things can be fantastic in terms of usability, but what happens at the same time is that costs go up and it becomes prohibitive for people who actually need usability and accessibility. So you build a place that's perfect for somebody who lives in a wheelchair, utilizes the wheelchair, and to get around, and all of a sudden now the zone that is most developed for them is inaccessible to them based on cost. So the same kind of issue comes in other cities. The implementation and the function of it is great. Its social outcome is not as great as it seems to be. So river connectivity. So this is more of that transportation conversation, and so forth. So these are, regular programming. They want to get a lot of this kind of activity going on, clean, safe, welcoming. A lot of cities in Portland, Oregon, they ended up hiring young people at minimum wage to go out hand out pamphlets on, what can you do in downtown, and to welcome people and give them directions and help them find, public restrooms and where they can get sunscreen if they're getting a sunburn, all the kinds of things that just being helpful and keeping eyes out on what's going on downtown. So those kinds of things can be helpful, but they can also, when it's like, okay, well, now we're going to identify some people as walking around and shopping and other people as loitering. So now you start to get distinctions between individuals, and people that are undesirable get pushed out, even though the whole point is accessibility. So, and diversity. So, one of the things that Brad says in his presentation later on is that the downtown needs to maintain and retain and regain its civic function, where anybody can go, and these are inclusive, welcoming spaces. But based on how they're regulated and controlled, they can be unwelcoming and exclusionary spaces, even while you're presenting a friendly and welcoming face. So these are things that need to be considered in the way that it plays out. So I don't have a whole lot on those particular pieces of it, other than to say that they can become very exclusionary very quickly depending on how they're managed. And that's going to come up in the commentary. So what I'm actually going to do now is jump forward and get to the city council members and what they have to say. So I'm going to pause, switch up my audio, and I'll be back in just a second, and we'll take a look at what some of the city council members have to say about this proposal.
We had an urban design partner on this effort, Cheney Bostic of Studio Seed, who is also based out of Denver. She really led the charge on developing these catalytic projects and looking at the
Thank you so much, Council. You're up. Who's going to start us off? Councilmember Olson.
Thank you. It's interesting, and I think important that you've narrowed things that can be accomplished within that 5-year period versus a lot of plans just so big and nothing or only certain things get done or partially done. So I appreciate that. I think it's going to make a difference in the vision plan. How would you rate, as you've seen other cities, the biggest issue as we do improvements? How do most cities fund keeping those improvements? Because we have an issue now that our downtown has a lot of repair work to be done. Our downtown has declined in the infrastructure in some of these older areas. What are communities doing to make sure, as you saw the top two, safe and clean? And we're far from that, in my mind. And so what are cities doing that build all these things, but you can't maintain them, then they have more things to fix? So what are you seeing out there across the country?
Oh, Councilman, you didn't throw me a softball here to start, did you?
No.
On the questions. Great question. It's part of what we actually specialize in, is not just the pretty projects, but then how are we going to maintain all this infrastructure and all this experience? The quick answer is public-private investment. It takes both the public sector and the private ongoing commitment. I think the good news for Cedar Rapids is you have the building blocks that we usually look for in a community. You have a SMID, which is a self-taxing agency. The downtown businesses and property owners already tax themselves an extra amount to contribute to maintenance and marketing and taking care of infrastructure. I do agree with you. I think there's some deferred maintenance downtown, and I think that is beyond the scope, frankly, of SMID. So that gets into capital repair, where groups like a SMID would work in tandem with the partner at the city to prioritize different capital improvements moving forward. That's the most common partnership we see on maintenance and infrastructure, both something like SMID working hand in hand with city.
Councilmember Van Orny.
I imagine everybody's going to want to talk right here. So the TLDR is that Cedar Rapids is about to get real cute. I'm reflecting today on a few things, and one of them is
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the interaction between Scott Olson and Brad in that conversation. So Olson asked, how do we pay for this development, and what is the infrastructure, how's the infrastructure maintained? So he's imagining that we're going to do all this construction, and then what, if the money isn't there, if the money isn't coming through to pay for it, then who's going to pay for it? And so Brad's response is it's a public-private investment combination. He said there is deferred maintenance, and what he means by that is the city has not kept up on the maintenance that it should have done, and that's beyond the scope of the SMID. So he's saying the city has to do its part, finish developing, finish doing the paving and the things that it should have done in the first place, and that's not the SMID's responsibility. But this private partnership, private and public partnership, needs to work together to make sure that the money is there. And I have some examples of that. So in Portland, Oregon, you've got the Nike store downtown. The Nike store is a beautiful space. It's a custom designed building. Inside, you see shoes displayed like sculptures. They are inside of plexiglass rounded cases with beautiful lighting. You've got video, you've got slow motion, you've got interviews, you've got all kinds of footage. There's millions of dollars worth of effort put into that building, and the building is not big enough. It does not have enough foot traffic that will ever repay the cost of the development in that building alone. What Nike is doing is they have their development team out in Beaverton, so it's just next door, and they've got their downtown location. So when people come to visit, they want to see Nike. Most of them do not get to go to the Nike headquarters where they're innovating and developing new products and testing and training and working with athletes and so forth. They get to go to the store downtown. So this multi-million-dollar store serves the purpose is to instill in the mind of a visitor something that is like going to their favorite museum, or the best museums in the world, but it's for the product. And so they leave, and this solidifies in their mind 15, 20, 30 years worth of shoe purchases. And so it's fulfilled through online. The visit is fulfilled through purchases that are made through online sales or through other shoe stores where Nike product is carried, or through custom shops that they go and visit to make a specific shoe purchase. And so all of these different kinds of things add up to significant value, but Nike is prepaying into the downtown to have this nice store, and they're also facilitating or participating in whatever downtown development work needs to be done. Where are those locations here in Cedar Rapids? We don't have Collins Aerospace. That's not, they don't have an interest in developing and building the downtown to put in money to sponsor a space that then helps to fund the downtown and helps to support them. They're not going to do a museum downtown. They're not going to do showcasing of all the work that they do. Most of it is private, top secret, and they want to retain their secrets, and they're also working government projects. So they are the kinds of people that want to sponsor that. So where's the money going to come from? We don't have those innovative brands that have sprung up out of our region, and that to the commodity thinking that I talked about earlier. So how are we going to go about getting that money? So Scott Olson has a really great question, and then the answer, so the SMID is going to work with the city. So the SMID is city sponsored, but now it pressures the city to say, hey, we're supposed to be the financial development district, so you got to put the money here. The city is already so behind on repaving roads and all the other kinds of work that they do that they're actually working off a spreadsheet, and they have like tick marks for, when the road has all of these features, then only then does it get repaired. So you can't switch portion of a road. It has to reach a certain level before it gets repaired, and everything's in line. If something happens to a road that now it meets the criteria, it could move up ahead of other roads. But it's to me that's kind of kludgy, and it's there's not critical thinking or proactive things going on there. But then something like the SMID could come in and put enough pressure to move the downtown area into early investment, reinvestment, a higher level of maintenance that would draw those resources that are already strapped, that are necessary for doing all the other work that we have to do in this city. So I think, Scott Owen's question is really right on the money. It reminds me a lot of Las Vegas. So Las Vegas has the Strip, and the Strip gets all the money poured into it. But if you drive around Las Vegas anywhere else, you're looking at these tan walls, on these buildings that are just being baked in the sun, and it's unpleasantly hot and doesn't seem, you know, life there doesn't seem as vital in town. It looks like all of the resources are sucked out of the rest of the town straight to the ship. So how are we going to deal with that? Are we going to create this Disneyland downtown and then sucked out of everything that we need to do around the rest of the city? The city's already proposed putting in a casino along the riverfront. You know, one of the big questions that I have about the city's investment strategy is so many of the things that they bring here are strip mining. They draw out resources, and yes, they might provide a few jobs here and there, but where's the money going? The money is going back to headquarters, and headquarters is in Florida, or it's in Illinois, or it's, you know, somewhere else in the country. It's not in Cedar Rapids. So what we ultimately need to be able to have the businesses that would fund this down is we need to focus on that innovation, and that innovation is going to come from diversity, creativity, forward thinking, getting away from the commodity mindset and finding things that actually serve people both here and around the country and around the world. So what does that look like? I think that we need to focus on that before we put our focus on rebuilding downtown. It would be money that would be much better spent. So Van Orny's had already started talking. I'm going to switch back to my recording, and Councilperson Van Orny is generally a very progressive person who I've seen her at many of the Pride events and out in the community, and takes a lot of focus on that. But I definitely want to hear what she has to say about this plan. I want to respond to it. So I'm going to stop my recording, get back to my audio, and I'll be back in just a sec.
You know, I had the opportunity to talk about Cedar Rapids, very short time period, roughly about 5 minutes with our strategic partners at the National League of Cities. And, you know, these are major companies that are invested in working with municipalities. And the overwhelming feedback was Cedar Rapids sounds amazing. And I had the benefit of explaining to them it's all those things shared. We really do have a lot of great things going on. So, you know, 6 years ago, I faced a runoff election today. Cedar Rapids has been very state of recovering for nearly half life and from floods and wind events. But now, after a lot of hard work, years of hard work and strategic initiatives, even with my own terms on council, we're finally getting to a place where we continue that resiliency. And that next phase of resiliency is optimizing our quality of life and ability to invest in our downtown and everything that comes with a bustling and vibrant downtown. Cedar Rapids is already a really great place to call home. There will always be people who have critiques and criticisms, and we do hard things too. Everything's happening concurrently, and I don't know that any citizen will necessarily have the benefit of understanding things concurrently we are doing, that they really should be proud of the tax dollar and value that they're getting for their tax dollars. But we are. And this is further reinforced when I talk with other, you know, council members in cities of our size, and toe to toe, they are just in awe of the things that we're doing, and not without good reason. But this continued activation will help retain and capture the 45 and under part of our population that we continue to talk about, but not necessarily engage and retain. It will help us also recruit people to stay and grow here as well as we continue our growing city. Our possibilities, I really feel, are limitless. And through the hard work by our council and our incredible city team, we have really worked through the difficulties of constant and often contiguous disaster recovery to get us to a place where our future really is exceptionally bright. I appreciate the work that you've put into this.
Thank you.
Councilman Bowles.
so let's talk a little bit about what Van Orney says. So she said all right, so let's talk a little bit about what Van Orney said. Off the bat, she said the TLDR is Cedar Rapids is about to get really cute. I don't know if TLDR is the right acronym for that, but I guess if you're skipping the report and you want to say that, that's the Disneyland downtown plan that I've been talking about here. So what's it gonna take for us to get past that kind of quick hit kind of thing? She said that the next phase of resiliency is to optimize our quality of life and our ability to invest in downtown and everything that comes with a vibrant downtown. So basically, Cedar Rapids has been responding to flood damage. Then we had a derecho that was probably it was one of the highest priced storms in the United States ever to cause damage. It listed as number 2 when it happened. So when we're talking about that, so she's saying, well, we've gone through these challenges and now we're at a situation where we're ready to invest in thriving through vibrant downtown. But we know that things are getting worse in terms of environmental threats. We have fast moving cars, we have all other kinds of challenges. And so what is the next challenge that we're going to face? Is building a downtown the best way to prepare for that? I do not know. She said, I don't know that any citizen will have the benefit of understanding how many things concurrently that we are doing that they should really be proud of the value that they're getting for their tax dollars. There will always be people who have critiques and criticisms, do hard things too. And I think that this is in response to me and several other people who have been coming and speaking at the city council and drawing out, identifying many of the challenges that are being pressed on the community, and even ways that the city's pressure under its current financial strains have been putting additional pressure back onto residents of Cedar Rapids. And so I think the city feels under attack. I think some of the feel under attack, but that's not my concern. And the reason for that, so she says, we do hard things too, but that should be the expected minimum, right? So everybody works hard. Here I am on a Friday night doing this recording. I'm not getting paid a single dime for any engagement that I do regarding the city, regarding the school district, regarding any of those different kinds of things. So, I'm putting in additional effort myself with no return. And the only return that I get is if they actually change their processes and do some things that then really benefit the community. So I think when we're looking at this, what we need to think about is how do we work in a different way, because working hard is, again, a continuation of that commodity mindset. In Iowa, people feel like I get up in the morning, I go and I detassel the corn, and then I go take the seed bags and I put them on the corn so that they get properly pollinated, and then I go eat lunch, and then I do more of that, and I go to bed, and then I get up in the morning and I do it all over again. And that's good work. So this idea of working consistently, having a very regular, regimented kind of schedule, that's very Midwestern mindset. And so when we're looking at that, is that really the right mindset for what we need downtown? I don't think that a regimented routine is what we do need. I think that we need new types of thinking in Cedar Rapids, and I think we need new ways of engaging with the work of invention and creativity. So if we can do something in this new area. I don't think that hard work is the best descriptor. Maybe smart work, maybe innovation, maybe creativity, maybe thinking outside the box might be better descriptors for what we need right now to generate the kinds of revenue that are going to create the companies that have the revenue to do in the downtown what they want to do. And then second to that, we need that thinking to be done in such a way that it doesn't negatively impact the diverse communities that are already living and working in the downtown and that already have a life carved out for themselves in the downtown. So that is a higher bar that we need to hit. So if people feel like they are working hard and we should pat them on the back and thank them for all the great work that they're doing. That is not the attitude that's going to get us where we need to go. So she also says that this continued activation will continue to analyze, capture, and retain the 45 and under part of our population that we talk about, but don't necessarily engage and retain. So younger people are continually leaving. So when I lived here I grew up in Ames from the age of 3. I was in New York as a child and moved at the age of 3 to Ames and then went to university. And in 2000, when I graduated with my master's degree, I left and went to Colorado. Not to Colorado, we moved to Portland, Oregon, and then we moved back across the country going to these different areas. And so when I think about that, they're graduating. I was looking at Iowa, and Cedar Rapids had a program where you could actually live on the waterfront, move into one of those buildings that I described that had low cost housing, and you could get forgiveness on your student loans. And looking at it, it was just like, no way am I going to stay here. I looked at Portland, Oregon, and Portland had 5 colleges in the downtown area, and I wanted to teach art. So I had an art, and that offered the launch pad for that career. I was able to go and teach at multiple colleges, built a career, became a college dean, and moved across the country to take a number of different academic jobs. So things are impactful in terms of how people make a decision about Cedar Rapids or anywhere else, right? So anywhere else generally wins over Cedar Rapids when people are making that decision. Not a whole lot of people make the decision to choose Cedar Rapids to stay, and not a lot of people choose Cedar Rapids as a destination that they want to move to. And a big factor in that has nothing to do with the city, the downtown, or Cedar Rapids in particular, but a lot of it does have to do with the state. Human rights are in a terrible situation. We have a single-minded government that is very conservative, and they have focused on restricting and removing rights. The city of Cedar Rapids wants to make a statement that it is a welcoming, inclusive, diverse community. But we're looking at the kind of reality of where we're at. I stay involved with the Cedar Rapids Pride Board. And when I'm talking with the board there, I see 2 members that are leaving in the next couple months. And one of them is moving out of the state of Iowa. They don't actually have a destination state, but they know not Iowa. And then the other is moving out of the country, specifically to a country that has some of the highest protections for LGBTQ individuals. And, so Iowa is not a place where people make a choice to go to because they get what they want or need. It is a place that they may be stuck in. It may be a place that fewer options. It may be those kinds of things. It might be for a job, but it's not that selected destination for people at this point. And so when the city is addressing that, instead of just saying, hey, we're a welcoming place, it needs to actually take a stand against the biases that are being pushed through state government, and stand up and take a position in relation to that. And then it would begin to have the perceived commitment that would build trust for people to choose it as a destination. They could be willing to come here to help fight for those rights and for a better society. But I don't think people are going to believe that it is a welcoming, great community given the scenario and the regulation that we have in the state right now. And so and move on from Van Orney. The next person that speaks is Tyler Olson. I'm going to go ahead and pause and switch my audio up, and I'll be back in a sec.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for your presentation today, and also the work that you've done prior to this to engage the community and members of the council in draft planning and process that you can do. Also appreciate the time and energy that the folks that you highlighted in your presentation did, and it was really heartening to see how many people responded to the different modes of opportunity for input. I think it's 1,400 maybe on the online survey, or at least total you gathered. And I thought that a lot of the data was really fascinating. The ones that you presented today, but then I guess I'll call them deeper cuts, some of the deeper cuts that you provided as well, just to see what people like about downtown, what they'd like to see improved, and, areas for investment and focus. So all in all, really helpful, and a lot of interesting information. The catalytic projects, I think, are really exciting, and I think Councilmember Wilson, the elder, put it well when I think he said there are projects that they're doable. I think there are projects that can get done. I appreciate the way that this plan comes together, and the way that projects get done in the core of the community are typically public-private or private-public partnerships. And I really like the fact that ones that were highlighted are there to spur, with some public dollars, spur a lot of private activity, because I do think there are willing investors that are looking for some public partnership as well. It always comes down then to execution, right? And how it gets done. And so I think it was the last slide where you talked a little bit about how different organizations are put together. I guess my question for you, you mentioned some options, didn't really necessarily recommend one or another. I won't ask you to, because you clearly did not want to put you on the spot to do that. So I guess I will ask you in lieu of that, kind of what do you see as, I don't know, I'm going to say strengths and weaknesses, but you know what I mean? Like, kind of what are different, how are different structures used well? Does that make sense? I mean, how do you look at it when you're kind of comparing?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question, Councilman. I want to be clear. We two points just to be clear on this. One is you got the right partners at the table. So you got, the city, you've got the SMID, you've got the Economic Alliance, and everyone is passionately involved with downtown. So that's number one. Number two, we suggested that there were two options plus. There could be other options that pop out of this. Either one works. So it's not an either or for the community. We think that either of the options we looked at work better. And there could be a third or fourth option that would work better than what you have. So what were some of the key things we were trying to improve, which I think was part of your question? A couple things. One, more involvement and accountability of the downtown community. And certainly the Economic Alliance has been really responsive, at least in intent, to move forward with some recommendations we had related to that. So these downtown organizations tend to include more downtown constituents in these activations and in the planning and in the governance of how these programs are managed. So that was one area we had. And then secondly, I would say these are the two primary ones. We do go into pros and cons within the report itself. But the other one is leverage of funding, and it actually
You can call me elder, it's okay. Looking over here.
is that disrespect or what the deal? Okay, all right. As a boomer, I want to be sensitive to these issues. So the Elder Olson, when he was talking about the different improvement in downtown, it requires that public-private partnership. So we do feel that the community could be more effective at leveraging additional resources. We could be raising more funds for downtown, whether it be through sponsorships or through grants or through philanthropic avenues. Particularly now, coming out of the pandemic, there's a lot of opportunity that we're seeing nationally for downtown areas, and particularly in the area of community building. Downtowns are uniquely positioned as the central gathering place for communities. And nationally, I know if you have this issue in Cedar Rapids, but polarized, and it's rare. We can bring everybody together in a place to celebrate our community, and downtown needs to be that place. And a lot of these projects actually related to that are bringing people downtown, bringing people together, and these are all fun. To your earlier point, these are fundamental activities. And back to your organization question, and I'll end it there, is we feel that we could be more effective, you could be more effective in Cedar Rapids in securing additional funding for many of these ideas that are in this plan.
Okay, I appreciate that. I think and it sounds like the SMID board is taking on this question. You mentioned a task force that they have, and
There's a nodding head.
Yeah,
SMID chair.
nods back there, and I appreciate that. I think that's, I guess, an important question for the board to answer, as to how they think the best way to proceed. Because I said I think there's some exciting ideas here, and it's gonna that and some other things are gonna make a difference in how it gets executed. And so answering that question will be an important one.
Councilmember Hager.
I guess I would just add,
All right, so there was a lot going on with that conversation. I definitely want to talk through some of that. Okay, so that was Tyler Olson and Brad talking about how do we make choices about what features are going to work within the overarching plan. And Brad responded they have that, how do you make it work really is the bottom line question. And Brad's comment was the organization needs to include more people in the community and governance. And so he's implying that there's generally a more diverse pool of people. He said you've got the right people involved at the table, but he also implies that there could be greater diversity in the makeup of the board and a community that's working on this endeavor. He said you could leverage more resources, thinking outside of the box in terms of grants, sponsorships, philanthropy. And so philanthropy would be support for museum exhibits. Philanthropy could be nonprofits that are working in the downtown area and activities that could elevate and amplify those nonprofits. So right now, because the developers, it's really driven right now by developers. How do we make money through this downtown? And Brad's comment is you need to think about how this downtown makes an activation. And he does this gesture. He's like, he's talking about is how a downtown can work as a civic space to bring many people from many different backgrounds together. But that doesn't work if you over manage the space and turn it into this kind of commercial Disneyland. And that is my core criticism of this entire plan, is it doesn't think about who are the people and how do the people actually engage and what does community look like in this new downtown. It just looks at how snazzy it is and how fun it is and how cute it is and how much money it's going to make and how it's going to revitalize and create this cycle of profitability and growth and development. The city has been chasing that same thing for decades when they put in a convention center and they redevelop malls. Like they're constantly looking for things that's going to make Cedar Rapids happen. And the thing that's going to make Cedar Rapids happen are the people that are here engaged in doing interesting things. That's the bottom line. And that's not the answer that the city wants to hear. They have never wanted to hear it. And I don't think they will ever want to hear it. We're going to need to, I believe, turn over the city council, eject the city manager, find a new city manager that has a different approach and mindset about things. And it may also extend to city council, because a lot of the behaviors of the city seem like they are only looking at the legal minimum. Like, can we do it? Well, the city attorney said it skims the lines, and do it. That is not a high quality ethical position that leads to creating trust. So that's why they're getting the kinds of feedback and criticism that they are receiving. So let's take a look at the report from Brad. So Brad, I stepped out of the meeting. I was actually on the list to speak at the tail end of the presentations that day. But when this presentation wrapped up, generally the people involved in a high value presentation, they go out in the hallway and just chat each other. So I followed Doug, who's the director of the Economic Alliance, out, and then I met Brad out in the hallway, and he and I had a good conversation, and Doug just kind of slid off to a different conversation because he doesn't want to deal with me. But even though I'm a member of the Economic Alliance, which he heads. So I'm going to jump over to my PDF and share that. Okay, so let's take a look at global trends. And let me get it enlarged for you. I want to expand this frame. Okay, so this is the report that Puma put together, and it is collected from data all over the country. And when I spoke with Brad, he and I emailed back and forth a couple of times. And he said the city of Cedar Rapids faces all the challenges that are in this report. Most cities are facing these challenges. And he said Cedar Rapids is facing all of them. Changing American demographics, the structure of talent and labor, and the types of matches between jobs and what people want and are capable of doing, lifestyles, what work is going to look like, what job sites are going to look like, how consumers are going to behave. Are they going to go to physical places to shop, or are they going to shop online? How do they engage? Are they looking for experiences? Or are they looking for things? And housing crisis. That is going to be a big one in Cedar Rapids. Because we already have a trapped housing market. And he highlights that putting development pressure in a downtown area does change the pricing scenario for that region, because our downtown is our highest diverse population with the lowest income. The risk is destabilizing people that are already getting by but not thriving. And so the question becomes, how do we activate and elevate our diverse community to strengthen it so that the diverse community remains in the downtown area, and has the resources to grow and thrive in the downtown area. And so this housing and its relationship, the pricing and development pressures are a big deal in this area. Disruption is a big area, and all of it, public health and safety, funding community in polarized age. The things that I mentioned is, he said, well, you guys aren't that polarized. It's great. You got such consistent feedback across. Yeah, but that's because the economic alliance screens the process and put them in a channel that's going to get the answers that they wanted from the community that they've targeted. And that community is a monoculture in and of itself. And so the researchers didn't push the barriers, the boundaries. Something that I was told by Brad was, oh yeah, the Economic Alliance put us in contact with the intermediaries. They're working with the immigrant population, and where those funnels coming from, we got all that information. I'm like, did you talk with the immigrants themselves? Because when you actually get beyond the intermediaries, you're going to get a different story. And you're going to get actually what the experience of living here is. And that's not a key message that the Economic Alliance and city has really pushed to explore and to promote. So we have such little input in the data that I don't think that the report actually could even approach representing what a diverse population would want out of a downtown development plan. I just don't think that it has anything going for it in that regard. Pandemic is the great accelerator of change in downtowns. Demographics remain favorable but can't be taken for granted, so you actually have to do some development work. Most of the downtown's most pressing challenges will require local and regional problem solving. Homelessness, crime, housing affordability, and this pressure that's on our diverse community. That right there is kind of the heart of the problem, that it hasn't even been, the surface of this problem hasn't even been scratched by the Development Commission or the SMID or any of the government officials that are working on this. And so when I look at it, those are the challenges that I see going on with this data. So I'm going to pause and get my audio switched over. Hager has some good comments, and then we'll continue from there.
So in 2007, when you were here, I would assume that the geographical borders today are much different than they were in 2007. So what excites me is to look at Mays Island as a centerpiece of our downtown versus a border. And the growth onto the west side. The second thing is then look to the south and you look at opportunities to like Lot 44, which is crossing over 8th Avenue and into the Nubo and the Czech Village District. Make everything accessible. So it's not just about a 4 or 5 block area in the downtown going up into the medical district. Incorporating all of those areas into how do you collaborate all of their different identities. The second thing I would say is what I caught interesting was historically Cedar Rapids has been known as kind of a franchise restaurant city. And if you look at what brings people downtown, and it's the food and beverage, I would guess to say that a large percentage of food and beverage is locally owned. And that really is something to say about our community and how we support locally owned. So it excites me, and it really, I do think and I appreciate that I would call it kind of low hanging fruit that we can accomplish immediately, and then go after some of the big things, ticket items, with public and private partnerships. So thank you very much. Appreciate everybody's help on this.
Councilmember Poe? Yeah, thank you.
So Marty Hager's comments, he likes that Mays Island is the center. So shifting the center of downtown from kind of the library area to the center of the waterfront. So we've got the Mays Island is in the middle of the river. And that allows the city downtown plan to extend onto the west side. And so he likes this opportunity to expand into Lot 47, which is on that side of the river, and treat this area as broader than it has been historically treated. He also says that Cedar Rapids was known as food capital, lots of strips with, quick food chains and franchises. And the downtown is mostly made up of local food, local restaurants, and an emerging kind of culinary scene. And he likes that. And so, one of the things that I see in his comments are he's looking for more pragmatic, usable kinds of downtown rather than the Disneyland kind of concept. And I want to actually share my screen and show some things from Instagram when I lived in Denver and kind of talk through what those features look like, and how they play out in the kind of redevelopment. So I'm going to share my screen in a different way. Window. Let's go back to here. And I'm going to scroll back a ways. So I lived in downtown Denver, and there's always interesting things going on. I just, it was downtown, this building with an irregular surface was going up, and the wind was blowing all the tarps in an interesting way. There's just stuff to look at all the time. There's artwork on walls and fires. This was from that year, kind of wrapping things up. Visit the Degas exhibit, and I was being looked at while I was photographing people. And this is the outside of the downtown museum. This is the new section that was under construction. And there's some interesting things that are built to downtown. So there's a whole theater district. So on this side is a small box theater, and on the far end, on the right-hand side, is the ballet, and the opera is next door to the ballet. And so they've got this whole cultural district, and this is an open air tunnel with glass over the top to protect people from rain and snow. And they hang these and the wind can blow through it. And so you just have really nice kind of experiential things. This is another trip, this downtown. It's a single street. There's bespoke boutique shops. So you've got a hattery down there. You've got several other different kinds of retail stores. And you get to the towers, down there, but, they've maintained this little main street strip. So they haven't torn everything down in Denver. And these are other downtown shots at night. There are a few installations that I think, so they rebuilt the inside of their train station. And so there's multiple little bars and restaurants and things in here. And it's just a nice place to go through. So when I took the bus down, the bus exits at the terminal. And so I would go through here every single day on my way to work. And just interesting look and feel to the whole place. There's one street that has all of these little visual things, so you can look through it. This is outside of the ballet theater, and when you look through it, you see a little picture of the interior, a historical image from a performance that was being put on. And so you kind of tie the present to the past with the idea that you're looking through this thing that is actually giving you an exhibit of the past experience of what Denver was like, where it came from. This is another one. These are cast, and then when you look through this lens, there's a big blue bear that is a big blue bear sculpture that's leaning up against or looking through the glass of one of the buildings. And so this is looking towards those three bears. And when you look into it, you see these three bears right here in that line with the building with the big blue bear on it. But I couldn't pull focus to get that shot exactly. So it is what it is. But you kind of see what some of these things kind of look like. I think I have an image of the trees that are near that. Yes, these are the trees. The blue bear is looking at glasses over here, about 2.5 stories tall. So those are some of the interesting art installation kinds of things that you see in the downtown and kind of how it flows. This is outside of the Museum of Modern Art, and the whole building is often wrapped in some kind of scrim or plastic sheeting that relates to the exhibit on the inside, and they spend a lot of money, obviously, styling the building to the exhibit. And you just get a lot of shots like that. Very interesting downtown. And there's one more. So they started developing these alleys, and inside in the alleys, they would put little artworks, and they would have entrances to various restaurants and bars and things like that. So you walk down the alley and you would run across something like this. And it's just a physical toy that you interact with, and it plays music and shows the lights. You can't hear the music because muted, and it's running through a different channel. But the idea here is a custom artwork. The city might pay $5,000 or $10,000 to install a series of these kinds of things, and then of course they've got maintenance and upkeep on that, and that raises the question of where is this money going to come from? You put all of these exciting little play interactive things, but something like that breaks down, and all of a sudden the charm of this little alleyway has disappeared, and they might have put in several $100,000 in redoing just the entrance to these little restaurants and bars to make it interesting. It's fun and engaging, but it also, that's all it does. So that, that times out pretty quickly. You see that once you interact with it, oh, that's fun. But, unless tourists coming through and it's exciting the tourists, it seems gimmicky. It doesn't last in terms of an experience. So those are some of the thoughts I have in comparison to a museum. This is inside the Modern Museum with a great exhibit that they did on Afrofuturism, and they just have great exhibits. So when I am thinking about, and this is just some of the architecture downtown in Denver, fascinating, just cool experience being in a place where, there's multi-million-dollar buildings everywhere that you look. So I don't think that we're going to get there. That alleyway is called the Dairy Block, and this photo was taken in there. So, they're just painting that so the pipes and everything are the same, and it just becomes Instagram-ready spaces, right? That's the idea. Here's the graphic that you see on the corner, right where that alley is, so this black square, and then doing things with the black background, and then you go to this little alley where all this kind of stuff is going on, and it's interesting. So it's delightful and quick and playful. but does it have staying power? Those are the kinds of questions that I have about that. And I think Hager's comments are interesting because they kind of highlight a different way of thinking about and looking at how that might play out in the overall flow of the city. So Poe is next. I'm going to stop and switch the audio over so we can hear what Poe has.
You, Mayor. First of all, I want to start off by thanking Brad and Amanda and Jennifer from our team. I love this vision plan and agree with the goals that you've set out, along with the action items. As I as I look through the packet and I go through all these action items, that it's really wonderful. And I agree also with the catalytic projects. And projects will help energize our downtown, which is exactly what we've asked you to come forward with. Because this is a SHMID, it's appointed by the mayor, it's a commission of the city, and because the city helped pay for this vision plan, I think we owe it to ourselves to see what the task force comes up with. What kind of formal structure are you looking for? Because again, as I look at all these wonderful action items and goals, there's a lot of work. There's a lot of work to do, not just, not just in the long term, but within the next year. So I guess my question would be, who's going to do that work? Right? Because there's a lot to get done. And to Marty's point, it's a lot of low hanging fruit, but it still has to be done, and it still has to have some accountability because of the amount of time and resources it's going to take just to get that low hanging fruit accomplished, getting some of that accomplished, I think. And I'm not so sure that the current structure has the ability or the capacity to do it. So I'm really looking forward to what the task force has to say and what they think, how they think we can get this done in a timely fashion. We just need to get it implemented, right? And that's what Jennifer had said was this can fit very nicely within our within the city's plan, strategic plan. And so I want to get it done because so many of these things I love and I agree with, and I can see how they're going to help. But I got to know how it's going to happen. And that's really important when you think about that public-private partnership. I'm just a little concerned at this point to provide a resolution without knowing how we're going to get this done. And at this point, Mayor, I'm kind of at the point where I think we should just kind of table it and wait to hear from what the task force has to say. Let's see where we're going to go with this. And before we put a full resolution on our plate, but I love the work. It's not about the work. I agree with it. I just want to know how we're going to implement it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor.
If I could respond quickly to that, Councilwoman, I think that's all legitimate. It's a legitimate concern. It is ambitious. There's a lot of stuff in there. Do be assured the partners, we've been talking to the partners throughout this process, and they're continuing to look at these, and certainly, Jennifer or the manager could respond to this, but we've been talking to the city, we've been talking to the Alliance about near term, what do we do? So we're not waiting for a task force report that might be months from now. So there are, to your point, there are several sort of low hanging fruit items in there that we're helping the parties identify that they now, and my sense is the partners are prepared to move forward now, while they also concurrently figure out the longer term structure issue. So there's sort of a desire here to walk and chew gum at the same time.
Yeah, and I could appreciate that. I do appreciate that. So it kind of begs the question, how is this going to get paid for?
So Poe is going to pull out all the stops here. So, so Poe says that she loves the vision plan and She appreciates that this was appointed by the mayor and the city helped pay for the research and so on and so forth. But what is it going to actually look like? What is it going to take to get it done? And she proposes actually tabling a vote and waiting for the task force, which is the next phase. The task force is going to come together and put together, take from the so this report includes a series of recommended implementations. Now there's going to be a task force, and the task force is going to take that, and they're supposed to bring out a series of recommendations from this proposal. So Poe actually, it's hard to tell if this is just completely theatrical or if this is Poe's legitimate position, but somebody's got to go out and say, well, what if we just table the whole thing? What if it's too much? What if we just hold off and listen some more and see what the task force comes up with? And I think that is an interesting position. Because Poe is also very interested in what is it going to cost and what is it really going to look like. She wants to see the reality before she, puts her credit card down, basically. So theatrical or not, I think that it is an important position and, one that is possible to do something with here. So the next person to talk is Overland. And I want to play his because he gets into what is the governance structure going to look like. So Poe presents, maybe we table this whole thing. Overland says, what is the governing body going to look like? How is it going to work? And it's interesting from here. So hold on while I switch my audio and I'll be back in just.
Councilmember Overland.
Thank you, Mayor. As I read the plan, and of course we had our meetings with you earlier, my basic takeaway was it's an exciting plan, and without repeating too much what some of the others have said, it's doable. But the other thing is it's flexible, because I've been of the opinion for a long time that downtowns are never finished. And I've lived in Cedar Rapids long enough to go back to when some of the gentlemen in this room were young people and we were tearing down and clearing blight in the downtown area. And that goes back to maybe 1890 or so. And the downtowns traditionally have to evolve as things are thrown at them. And if we go back 20 or 30 years ago, we never would have guessed that we would see all the people that are moving into the downtown area. Many people thought, well, that'll never happen, but it is, and it's happening rapidly here. And so I think the important thing that we have to do is set up a governing body that reflects the people that live, work, and invest in the downtown area, and also, most importantly, that visit downtown for various reasons. And I'm not here to suggest how that ought to work, but I think it's important that that governance is not only accountable to the funders, and it happened, but also accountable to the various stakeholders that are operating in the downtown. And it's great to have goals, but you also have to measure, are you reaching those goals? Not so much on a 5 and 10-year basis, but on an annual basis. And quite frankly, some of those will probably change as time goes by and new things will come up. But at the same time, I think with the governing body, it needs to be folks that are all on the same page, that see what the goals are and are doing active measurement to make sure we are getting there and figure out what the obstacles are. So in the long run, I'm extremely optimistic. I think as I read a lot in Wall Street Journal about other communities, we are nowhere in a bad situation compared to a lot of communities around the country. They talk about, well, this will take 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. And I think we have a tremendous opportunity to move our downtown area to this point where years ago we would never have dreamt it. So I think the report is outstanding and I look forward to continued evolution of it. Thanks.
Councilmember Thomas.
All right, so Overland makes some interesting points. And let me get my screen sharing the way I want it. I want to expand myself and minimize the other screen. So Overland, says the plan is flexible and doable, but his area of interest is what the governing body is going to look like that is set up to represent the people that live, work, and invest in that downtown area. And then he says, most importantly, that visit downtown. And I think that there's a split here. So people that live, work, and invest are one group. And then demographic that spends is largely the visitors. So people live and work in the downtown area. Let's say you have an apartment and you have a job both in downtown. You're receiving benefits from that, but you're not a primary consumer. The primary consumer is somebody that's coming in from one of these other areas that they've identified, that they've targeted. And that's a different, it's not, we don't want the consumer demographics to be represented in terms of the governing ordinance, but we do want good research into what the wants and needs of a demographic that we're presenting this downtown offer to, right? So we need to do market research on who is going to come and visit and work and play in downtown. But we also need to do a separate kind of research, and that has to do with representing people that live, work, and invest in the downtown. So those are, again, 3 different unique demographics. And they, as I've said before, the people that live closest to downtown haven't even scratched the surface of having conversations with them. I suspect that if you interviewed people in Wellington Heights and got enough participants in Wellington Heights and Jackson to be a statistically significant sample, that you would find very different answers, even if you asked for people to describe the boundaries of the downtown. Where's, what are the main features of downtown Cedar Rapids, and where do you go downtown? If you opened up an open-ended question, a lot of people might say, well, First Street is downtown in area that would be considered 5 or 8 blocks from downtown in relation to the city council. So we don't even know what attitudes and beliefs are about what the function and role and place and fit of downtown in the Cedar Rapids area really is for those that live here. The city has a pattern of drawing its borders very tightly. So when they say live and work, I have a question about that, because I want to know if Scott Overland is saying, okay, well, the borders are this map that we've created, and if we put up an apartment building within that map, that somebody that lives there and somebody goes into that map and take a job, now they work there, and somebody else buys a property across the line, they don't invest in downtown because they are, 1 block over. So in terms of how this is being perceived and who the constituents are, I've got big questions about that. I think that they should broaden the scope of constituents in terms of downtown residents to be broad, to extend into this fuller circle that goes into the west neighborhoods and into the east neighborhoods and up First Avenue and in toward Mount Mercy College. And when you start to then look at this larger group, you've got high diversity and you've got a variety of opinions, beliefs, attitudes, lifestyles, and you've got LGBTQ individuals, you've got many cultures represented. And so then you start to gather real data about what the people that live and work and engage their lives wholly in the downtown region really want. So I think Overland's idea is good, but I don't think that he, through the way the research has been conducted and what the boundaries are and what the boundaries could or should be in order to get the answers that he's looking for. I just don't think that the data is there to be able to do that. So Todd is next up. I want to hear his thoughts because he is the representative for the region I live in, which is Cedar Rapids. So I'm going to pause and get my audio switched over, and I'll be back in just a sec.
Thank you, Your Honor. Pleasure to work with you guys. You brought in a nice perspective, and I think it was a healthy revisit of the plan and existing plan. I'm less worried about structure when I revisit past plans and past initiatives. For me, it really comes down to the leadership of that structure. And I think you have to fundamentally address, at least in my belief, and I've been sort of an outsider looking in, but there's been a gradual disconnect between council and downtown in terms, not necessarily in terms of the vision, but of the implementation and the day-to-day operation. I look back at Cedar Lake, and that was years. It came out of the 2017 plan. And so it took 10 years to actually get to the point where you're actually implementing. And I'll go back to, I remember a time, probably 1999, where the 4th Street tracks, there was a plan. The plan had been done for the land and to create the pathway along the tracks, but there was no determination in terms of who was going to implement it. And it sat on the shelf until somebody got chewed out for it sitting on the shelf, and then it got done. So while we've got a lot of great things going on downtown, at the same time, it's still pretty fragile if we really want to be honest with ourselves. And so I appreciate task forces, but I think a lot of this stuff is things that could be done in an afternoon by setting people in a room and trying to figure out who's going to take what piece of this. Ultimately, council, we're going to a budget session here soon. So it'd be nice and healthy to at least have some of these discussions prior. And so I'm more in favor of approving the plan now and dealing with the minutia who's going to operate it and ultimately drive it. You know, because councils change, so do downtown businesses. But you have to have that living document. You need to get that, you know, on the books now and really make a solid commitment and with a timeline in terms of who's going to drive it. And so I'm more in favor of having that discussion sooner rather than spending a significant amount of time and resources to hand it out over time, getting it done now. But thank you for your help.
All right, with all due respect.
Okay, so we've got Dale Todd's comments, and he said that he was worried about the structure, and so he's countering Overland, and he also counters Poe, because he says he basically wants to move it to a vote, and then he wants to work out the details later, and basically use the task force to sort out what is it going to look like. He wants to get it moved forward. So he highlights the importance of the leadership. So Overland is talking about the governing body, and Todd agrees, but who is the leader and who's driving this. He feels that there's a gradual disconnect between the city council and the downtown, and he feels like, it seems that he feels like this is an opportunity to re-engage the city with the downtown. My question in regarding, as it regards that comment, is it really a good idea to posit that connection on a set of fiscal responsibilities? So you're going to vote to put money into this plan, and the city's going to partner with the SMID. And if the SMID fails to come through on the money, then the city's got to come through on the money. So basically put the money down first, and then because now you're obligated, it's going to force the city to re-engage with the downtown. I don't like that. I think if you can't get a city council to plan and work with and engage the downtown district, maybe we have the wrong people. Maybe we need a new city council. Maybe we need a new city manager. Maybe we need new leaders in the Economic Alliance and people that are doing this whole kind of development plan in the first place. They've repeatedly done the same thing where they exclude anybody that's different from the opinion that they're looking for. The Economic Alliance is outside of the city, so the city is required to meet regulatory requirements in terms of access and disability and diversity and rights and so forth. But an independent nonprofit organization has no responsibility in that area. So the city outsources the Economic Alliance. The Economic Alliance can violate things that the city would otherwise have to follow, and the city would take a lot longer and have to be more meticulous in terms of its processes. So I think we've got the wrong players. So Brad thinks that they've got the right organizations and right people on there. I think we've got the wrong people leading each of the organizations. I don't think that the people have the knowledge, capacity, and willingness to do anything that is not already biased toward their pre-existing attitudes and beliefs. So the mayor is going to contrast with Todd, and it gets a little spicy for a second here at the end. So I'm going to stop again. Let's get the mayor's comments, and then we'll wrap up.
Councilmember Todd, it is not minutia. It may be potentially one of the most important things about getting this plan done. The organizational structure, this is extremely important. And I know I voiced my, thoughts on that in front of multiple rooms. It'll be a part of multiple conversations going forward. It is extremely important to making this happen and be successful. If you believe cities are forever, which you hear me say all the time, then a healthy, vibrant, relevant downtown is really the difference between a city that survives and one that just thrives. Our city right now is electric. If you've been around lately, in every quadrant, there are reasons to celebrate and reasons for every quadrant to be optimistic. I'm so excited for the future. And a point of personal privilege regarding this plan, I want to first and foremost thank the men and women on this council. I think you just heard an example of we think, how we deliberate. This isn't the first time we've seen this plan. There are conversations that have been going on for months about this plan. I am so proud to work alongside you with this as a priority. You put your money where your mouth is. Bennett will be continuing for this council. City teams, most notably City Manager Pomerantz, Director Pratt, on this. Your passion is contagious for this. And I think, what's most important is you. And I mean you out there, not just in the gallery, you watching, you in the community. You drove this. You saw the results of those surveys. That was crystal clear. That was you. This is a plan that is for you and by you. I'm grateful that our community cares that much. Town Schmid and the 2001 Development Group for their financial support alongside the city to make this thing happen and actually get it in motion. It's because of those actions and stepping up. We are here today. And it really is exciting. Just beginning. The devil is always in the details. This is an innovative, creative, and fairly involved, doable, but yes, involved plan, and it's going to require innovation and creativity that we haven't seen and we don't see right now. What got us to this point isn't going to get us, I believe, to where we need to go, which is why these future conversations about organizational structure are going to be critical, I believe, to the success of this plan. And I certainly look forward to having those conversations about what will ultimately lead us to success. I'm hoping we'll include you, Brad, in those conversations going forward. I also want to assure everybody that you have the full commitment of this council, certainly of this mayor, to make sure that we get this done. It's been a long time coming. The time is now to make this happen. And I look forward to all the great things happening, not just downtown, but certainly in every quadrant. So if we have no other comments on that, I'd like to
So Tiffany takes it to a vote at the end of her comment, but I want to talk through her comment and then address the vote really quickly. So Mayor O'Donnell says that the structure and the plan are important to make the plan successful. She cites she likes to say that cities are forever. Cities are one social structure, and we lived in times where there weren't cities, and there were probably pretty good encampments and traveling bans, as well as cities. Whether cities are forever or not is a very open question, given the environmental crises that this city has faced and the other cities are facing, the fires that we see up in Canada. When those fires reach Iowa, all bets are off. I think that there are going to be real challenges to cities when global climate change has it's even further impact than it has had so far. And so the mayor says that innovative and creative skills that we haven't seen and don't see right now are necessary to make this happen. She said, what has got us to this point won't get us to where we need to go. And so the mayor is thinking about, what are some other skills, what are some other ways of working and thinking that are going to get us to a future plan. But I don't think the future plan, so if the skills aren't here to get to the future plan, I don't think that the future plan has been successfully mapped. And I keep coming back to this question about the public space and the civic qualities of a downtown center. I don't think that the task force that has been put together is committed to that. I don't think they're even interested in it. I think they are interested in a quick way to bolster values and generate cash flow. And I think those are the bottom line for everybody that's on that committee. So, I am going to take a wait and see kind of approach. But I think that, do think that the mayor is right about a different approach than what we see in the Midwest right now. And I don't think that there's a lot of people that have experience with it and have knowledge and skill, especially in areas like branding and, creating a cultural story that sticks, that's powerful. When I talk with the city about story, I spoke the other night, Tuesday night, and I told them that their stories are going to remain weak because they are unwilling to commit to the conflict elements of a story. You've got an inciting incident, and the inciting incident is the thing that changes the status quo. So if the status quo was just business development, and then we started having environmental crises and going back to more business development, that is not actually an inciting incident creating a change and a new pathway. It's actually a reversion, ignoring of the critical change that's happening in the world, and burying our heads in the sand and saying, well, we'll just, do business as usual, and we just need to get a hybrid downtown, and that's going to get the cash flow that we need to fix the stuff. But worse things are coming down the pipe in the area of the environmental catastrophes this region has experienced. So I actually think the innovative thinking it shouldn't be focused on how to vitalize the downtown. It should be thinking about how do we create cultural systems that actually enrich and build people up and great capacity, because we're going to need all hands on deck. If we were to get something worse than flood, worse than the Great Show, what would that look like? How would people come together? In the Great Show, people came together at first to help clear streets. But then after that, it got to a point where it was a grind, and people just kind of like went in their houses. It was still during COVID, they went back into their houses, and everybody buckled down, and they dealt with their insurance. They dealt with their, damage to their home, and it wasn't the collective qualities of people coming together that occurred in the first weeks when electricity was out, and when roads needed to be cleared, and when lots of wood needed to be cut and moved. All of that communal spirit disappeared when the hard work hit in, came to bear. And I think that if we can develop, what does a resilient community look like? A resilient community that does not look like a cute downtown where people can go and shop. That is not a resilient community. A resilient community is one where the people actually have the knowledge, skills, and resources to come together and support itself with no external additional revenue flow. Is how do we get people from out there coming here, spend their money so that we can have what it is that we want, which is, it's really undefined. It really hasn't been described as to what that downtown should look like. It should look like lots of people coming through the airport, going downtown, shopping, staying in a hotel, dirt, and spending more money, and then another night, and then going back to the airport and leaving. I guess that's what the picture looks like. I don't have, they've been given us a story of who it is that comes downtown, is that they do downtown, why they chose this downtown instead of Disneyland Fort Lauderdale, or Disneyland Seattle, or Disneyland Portland, or Disneyland. I think there's lots and lots and lots of cities. Even the research that was presented by Puma, it highlights all the cities that they were. People could go to any one of those cities and get this delightful downtown experience. And the only difference would be which shops and stores and restaurants and so forth are offered there. So is making another one of these going to create a resilience? I don't think so. And I think the plan to create a resilient Cedar Rapids has to think bigger and actually in a different direction. The downtown should be the result of the innovation, not the precursor that hopes it will generate and draw innovation to Cedar Rapids. Everything about this plan is going backwards, and it's going backwards in the same way that previous development plans have gone in Cedar Rapids. I don't see them changing their structure, their pace, or where it is to go. Any last thought? Any last thought? Just meow. Is that it? We're just gonna end with a meow. Meow. It's okay. We can end with a meow. We can end our live with a meow. What do you say? You just want down. Okay. We'll just end like that then. Okay. Thanks, everybody.